In the huge city of Dubai, where glass towers scrape the sky and the desert whispers ancient secrets, an Arab businessman disguises himself as a driver to find out about his wife's secret life. What he finds will break his heart. Most people could only dream of being as rich as Omar al-Rashid when he was born. He was wrapped in the smoothest silks and surrounded by grandeur from the moment he took his first breath. There should have been no room for longing. However, Omar has had a hollow ache inside him since he was a child, like a seed ready to be freed. The al-Rashid mansion had beautiful art, fountains that sparkled, and peacocks that strutted through the grounds like kings. But it seemed like every shiny surface only reflected back a kind of void that hurt Omar's soul. Omar found comfort in the family's large library when he was old enough to go off on his own. It was a huge room with shelves going from floor to ceiling. The shelves were full of books that smelt like paper and ink and maps that showed places outside of his home's golden walls. He loved reading about faraway lands, old cultures, and places where people didn't follow the rules of duty but instead did what made them happy. His amber eyes would spark with excitement as he traced the paths of explorers and scholars, imagining himself taking those same roads someday. He started to nurture a dream that took him beyond Dubai's sparkling skyline to a place that was both strange and familiar. But as his curiosity grew, so did the burden of his family's demands. Omar's father, Ferd, was a formidable man, a titan in the oil business who saw his son's passion as both admirable and dangerous. He would watch Omar with a complex mixture of pride and caution, understanding the boy's thirst for information yet fearing what the world beyond Dubai might steal from his heir. Omar's mother, Amira, was softer but no less insistent, holding on to customs that had kept their family strong for generations. She always reminded him of his engagement given to Mariam, his cousin and betrothed by arrangement. Since youth, they had grown up side by side, laughing and learning together, but both knew that the love expected of them was not something they shared. Their families had woven this future for them long ago, binding them in a promise meant to protect their bloodline. Yet every shared glance between them held a silent understanding. Mariam's smile never quite reached her eyes, and Omar would feel a pang of guilt mixed with relief each time he met her look. He would think to himself, love should grow on its own, not be commanded into existence. But still, he stayed silent out of respect for the traditions that held his family's empire together. As the years passed, Omar's longing for freedom only grew, intensified by the walls that seemed to close in tighter with every whispered mention of his upcoming marriage. By the time he reached 18, the weight of expectation had become unbearable. When he made the choice to study finance in the United States, it was like a bolt from a clear sky, leaving his family reeling. Amira wept, fearing she might lose her son to the temptations of a strange land. Ferd, though reluctant, saw a glimmer of chance. He hoped the knowledge Omar would acquire abroad could one day benefit the family empire. Yet he knew that sending Omar away might risk loosening the grip custom held over him. Before his departure, Omar was reminded once again of his job, of the bond that tied him to Mariam. Standing before her, he felt a mix of guilt and confusion. Mariam looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite place, a strange mix of resignation and hope. He searched her face for something, some sign that might break the quiet spell of tradition binding them, but all he found was the same doubt, the same uncertainty he held himself. And so, on a crisp morning as the sun rose over the desert, Omar took his first steps toward freedom. He boarded a plane, leaving behind the familiar sands and the vast house, leaving behind his family's worried faces and the weight of an engagement that hung over him like a shadow. For the first time, he felt the taste of freedom on his lips, mixed with a bittersweet pang. The trip to America was not just a physical one, it was a break with everything Omar had known. It was a leap into the unknown, where he could learn, discover, and perhaps even become the person he'd always imagined himself to be. In his heart, he carried a single thought: one day I will return, not just as an heir to the Al-Rashid fortune but as someone who truly knows the world and his place within it. With each mile that passed beneath him, the pull of duty faded, and Omar's thought soared higher, unfurling with each passing cloud. He didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, he allowed himself to hope for something beyond the heritage his family had laid out. As the plane touched down in the bustling world of New York City, Omar felt his heart quicken, not from fear or regret but from the thrill of new starts. In America, Omar dove into his studies with relentless focus, soaking up information like a thirsty sponge. Far from the lavish Dubai parties, he found the beauty and simplicity and the worth of hard work. His classmates from every corner of the world taught him that the wealth of the spirit far outweighed any material riches. It was in his final year of university that he got news that would forever alter the course of his life. Miriam, accompanied by her mother, had chosen to visit him in the United States. Omar, filled with a mix of anticipation and worry, prepared everything to welcome them. But fate had other plans. The plane carrying Miriam and her mother never made its destination, vanishing into the vast waters of the Atlantic. The tragedy hit Omar like a sandstorm, passing through and leaving nothing untouched. For days, he wandered the streets of New York like a lost soul, searching for solutions in a world that suddenly felt hollow and meaningless. In those dark moments, he vowed to stay in America, burying himself in work and building a life far from the painful memories awaiting him back in Dubai. Years passed, and Omar made a name for himself in the world of business. However, destiny came knocking once more when he got word that his father had fallen gravely ill. Without hesitation, he took the first trip back to Dubai, leaving behind the life he had built. Upon his arrival, he found his father on his deathbed. With his last breath, his father asked him to take control of the family business. Omar, with a heavy yet determined heart, accepted the burden that had always been his birthright. Omar's return to Dubai felt like waking from a long sleep. The city had changed, stretching even further toward the sky, but the desert scent and the spices in the market were just as he remembered. He immersed himself in work, learning the ins and outs of the oil business his father had built with such determination. Long nights at the office and endless days of negotiations became his new normal, filling the emptiness left by his father's death. It was during one of those late nights that he met her, Lila, a young receptionist with deep green eyes and hair as dark as the desert night. She entered his office to give some forgotten documents. Her beauty was like an oasis amidst the dry world of numbers and contracts that filled Omar's days, but it was her warm, sincere smile that truly captivated him. From that moment on, Omar found excuses to pass by the reception desk, sharing kind words with Lila. Little by little, he found a depth in her that went beyond physical beauty. Lila was intelligent and compassionate, her laughter ringing like silver bells, and her knowledge seemed to belong to lives past. Despite the vast differences in their lives, Omar found himself irresistibly falling in love. Their encounters became more regular, and soon they were meeting outside of work. Omar would take her to luxurious restaurants and give her jewels fit for a queen, but he realized Lila found more joy in simple moments: a walk along the beach at sunset, a shared cup of coffee in a quiet corner of the market, a talk under the desert stars. Their relationship grew quickly, like rare desert flowers after an unexpected rain. In Lila, Omar found a friend and a partner. She heard without judgment, advised him without pretense, and loved him unconditionally. For the first time in his life, Omar felt that he had found a home, not in a place but in a person. 6 months after their first meeting, under the glow of a full moon and the lights of the city, Omar proposed to Lila. He did so without a ring or grand move, just with words straight from his heart. Lila, with tears in her eyes, accepted, sealing her word with a kiss that tasted of hope and the future. The news of their engagement spread through Dubai like lightning. In the desert high society, buzzed with talk and speculation. Who was this woman who had captured the heart of the city's most eligible bachelor? Omar's mother, Amira, heard the news with a mix of surprise and distrust in her eyes. No woman could ever be good enough for her son, let alone a simple receptionist. Despite the resistance and the whispers, Omar and Lila married in a ceremony that blended Dubai's high society opulence with the simplicity Lila treasured. As they exchanged vows beneath an arch of white roses, with the setting sun painting the sky in hues of gold and red, Omar felt he had finally found his place in the world. Yet even in that moment of perfect happiness, a shadow of doubt crept into his heart, fueled by the venomous words of those who couldn't believe in a love that crossed social barriers. The first few months of marriage were like a dream for Omar and Lila. Every morning, Omar woke enchanted to find Lila by his side, her hair spread across the pillow like a blanket of night. The afternoons they spent exploring the city, finding corners that even Omar, a native of Dubai, had never known. Lila had a gift for finding beauty in the everyday, turning a simple stroll through the market into an adventure filled with colors, aromas, and laughter. However, like the calm before a storm, this happiness was fated to be tried. The whispers of high society, which at first were barely noticeable, soon began to grow louder. At gatherings and business events, Omar couldn't ignore the sidelong glances, the conversations that abruptly fell silent when he neared. His mother made no attempt to hide her disapproval, treating Lila with a frosty politeness that barely masked her disdain. One of those nights, after a particularly tense dinner with his mother, Omar felt the first crack appear in his trust in Lila. As they prepared for bed, he couldn't ignore how Lila avoided his eyes, how her answers were short and evasive. Could his mother's words have repeated in his own mind? Could there be some truth to the claim that Lila was only with him for his wealth? The seed of doubt, once sown, grew at an alarming pace. Omar began noticing little things he would have ignored before. How uncomfortable Lila seemed when he gifted her expensive jewelry, or how her eyes would sometimes drift sadly toward the humbler parts of the city. Did she feel stuck in this world of luxury and opulence? In this cloud of confusion, Arturo, his trusty chauffeur, approached him with news that shook his world. With a soft, worried voice, Arturo shared that he'd been driving Lila regularly to a modest home on the city outskirts, a small house in a neighborhood that sharply contrasted with her present life of luxury. The news hit Omar like a punch in the gut. His mind, clouded by mistrust, started weaving darker and darker stories. Did Lila have a secret life? Was there a secret lover waiting for her in the dark of the city? The thought that the woman he loved could be deceiving him tormented him day and night, taking his sleep and his peace of mind. Unable to approach Lila directly, dreading both the confirmation of his suspicions and the chance of hurting her unjustly if he was wrong, Omar made a desperate choice. Using his resources, he got a disguise that would allow him to become Arturo's double. He dyed his hair, wore contact lenses to change his eye color, and altered his voice and stance. He would become his own chauffeur, following Lila on her mysterious trips, determined to discover the truth for himself. On the day he set his plan into motion, Omar's heart pounded in his chest. From a distance, he watched as Lila left the mansion, as beautiful as ever, though with a look of worry he'd never noticed before. With trembling hands, he started the engine and followed at a cautious distance, venturing into Dubai's less glamorous areas. Each turn, each stop increased his anxiety. Finally, the car stopped outside a modest home, its walls chipped and a small iron gate rusted with age. Omar parked at a discreet distance, watching as Lila got out and approached the door, heart in his mouth. Omar watched as the door opened. He'd expected to see a young guy, maybe a former lover from Lila's past, but what he saw left him breathless. An elderly man, bent with age and leaning on a cane, met Lila with a trembling embrace. The smile that lit up his wife's face was filled with a kindness Omar had never seen before. At that moment, all his doubts vanished like mist under the desert sun. Unable to control his curiosity and remorse, Omar shed his disguise and neared the house. The sound of his steps alerted Lila, who turned with surprise and fear in her eyes. "Omar," she whispered, her voice trembling, "what are you doing here?" The old man, confused, looked from one to the other, gripping his cane more tightly. With tears in her eyes, Lila began to explain. The old man was her father, a carpenter who had worked hard his whole life to give his daughter an education. When she met Omar, her father had asked her to keep his existence a secret, afraid he would be a barrier to her happiness. "I didn't want you to be ashamed of me," the old man said in a broken voice, speaking to Omar for the first time. Shame and sorrow flooded Omar. He understood how deeply he'd misjudged Lila, how much he'd let others' prejudices cloud his view of her. He fell to his knees before her, asking for forgiveness through his tears. Lila, with a tenderness Omar knew he didn't deserve, held him tightly, her own tears mixing with his. "I love you, Omar," she whispered. "I've loved you from the very start, not for your money or your position, but for your heart." The elderly man, moved by the scene, stepped forward with unsteady steps and put a wrinkled hand on Omar's shoulder. At that moment, Lila shared another piece of news that once again shook Omar's world. With a shy smile and shining eyes, she said, "I'm pregnant." The news hit Omar like rain over the desert, filling the dry scenery of his doubts with life and hope. Joy overwhelmed him, washing away all his earlier suspicions. Omar stood embracing Lila, and in a move that surprised even himself, hugged her father as well. "Your family now," he said strongly. "I want you to come live with us." The old man, overwhelmed with emotion, could only nod as tears streamed down his wrinkled face. That night, on their way back to the house, Omar and Lila spoke like never before. They shared their fears, their hopes, and their dreams. Omar admitted the pressures he'd felt, the doubts others had sown in him, and how he'd allowed it to cloud his judgment. Lila, for her part, spoke of her inner struggle, wanting to protect her father while making a new life. "I promise I will never doubt you again," Omar said, taking Lila's hands in his voice filled with conviction. "And I promise I'll love our child with all my heart, just as much as I love every part of you." Lila smiled, a smile so warm it lit up the night like 1,000 stars. "And I promise to always be honest with you, no matter what," she responded. As their car neared the house, Omar made a decision. They would no longer live isolated in their ivory tower. He would bring his mother, his friends, and everyone who had doubted Lila to see the truth firsthand, to witness the pure, genuine love they had found, a love that rose above class and wealth. Word of Lila's pregnancy and her father's arrival at the Al Rashid mansion spread quickly through Dubai's social circles. Amira, Omar's mother, received the news with a mix of conflicting feelings. On one hand, the thought of becoming a grandmother filled her with a joy she hadn't felt in years. On the other hand, the humble presence of Lila's father in her opulent home challenged everything she considered proper. But as days went, Amira began to see a change in her son. Omar radiated a happiness she hadn't seen since he was a child. She watched as he laughed freely with Lila and her father, his eyes bright with a love so pure, so true, that it began to thaw the ice in her own heart. One afternoon, while Omar was at work, Amira found herself alone with Lila's father in the yard. The old man sat on a bench, enjoying the roses blooming under the desert sun. Hesitantly, Amira sat beside him. "They're beautiful, aren't they?" the elderly guy said, gesturing toward the flowers. "But not as beautiful as the love I see between your son and my daughter." Those simple words struck something deep within Amira. In the old man's eyes, she saw the same pure love she felt for Omar. In that moment, she understood that the true worth of a person wasn't found in their bank account or social standing, but in their ability to love and be loved. Meanwhile, Omar worked tirelessly to build a better world for his growing family. Inspired by Lila's story, he created scholarship programs for underprivileged youth and invested in clean energy projects, imagining a better future for his child. Every evening, he returned home to eat with his extended family, savoring the simplicity and love that now filled their home. Lila, for her part, blossomed in her new job. As her belly grew day by day, so did her love for Omar and their new family. She spent afternoons with her father, listening to stories from his youth and sharing her hopes for the future. Often, Amira joined them, bringing tea and sweets, slowly building bridges between two worlds that at once seemed incompatible. As the due date drew near, the Al Rashid mansion buzzed with expectation. Omar turned a room into a beautiful nursery, painting the walls himself with scenes from Arabian folk tales. Lila made blankets and clothes, weaving each stitch with love and hope. Finally, on a bright summer night, Lila gave birth to a beautiful baby boy. Omar held his son in his arms, struck by the wonder of life. Tears of joy streamed down his face as he looked at Lila, tired but radiant. "He's perfect," he whispered, kissing her forehead. In the days that followed, the house came alive with the sound of their grandson. Amira spent hours cradling him and humming ancient lullabies. Lila's father carved wooden toys, passing his skill to a new generation. Watching all of this, Omar felt his heart swell with happiness. One night, with the whole family gathering in the living room, Omar raised his glass in a toast. "To love," he said, looking at each person around him, "to my family and to second chances, which allow us to see the true beauty in life." Everyone raised their glasses, united in a moment of pure joy and gratitude. Over the months, life at the Al Rashid house found a new rhythm. Babies' cries mixed with the bird songs in the yard and the gentle murmur of the fountains. Omar embraced his new role as a father-mother with a mix of excitement and nervousness, waking in the middle of the night to change diapers and soothe cries, tasks he never thought he'd take on with such joy. Lila thrived as a mother, her love for their son filling every part of their home. Yet as time went on, she began to feel a restlessness she couldn't ignore. Despite all the happiness surrounding her, she missed the independence and sense of purpose her work had once given. One afternoon, as their son slept peacefully in his crib, Lila approached Omar with a suggestion that took him by surprise. "I want to go back to work," she said, her voice a mix of drive and nerves. Not at the reception, but in something that could make a real difference. Omar, initially taken aback, listened closely as Lila shared her desire to help other women from humble beginnings find opportunities in the business world. Though a part of him feared the changes this might bring to their family life, a deeper part swelled with pride and respect for the woman he had chosen as his partner in life. "I'll support you in whatever you decide," he said, taking her hands in his. "Your strength and compassion are what made me fall in love with you, and I want the world to see how amazing you are." With support, Lila began working on the foundation she envisioned, offering education and job chances to women in need. Omar's study turned into the headquarters of this new business, filling up with plans, proposals, and dreams of a better future. Meanwhile, Amira and Lila's father made an unexpected bond through their care for little S. The grandmother, with her grace and refinement, and the grandfather, with his simple wisdom and calloused hands, complemented each other wonderfully in the art of doting on the little one. Together, they shared stories that mixed the grandeur of Arabian Nights with the folk tales Lila's father had heard in his youth. But not everything was good. Lila's move to work outside the home drew criticism from certain social circles. Some of the Al-Rashid family's friends couldn't understand why the wife of a wealthy guy would need to work. Rumors and critical looks began to circle once more. Omar, remembering the lessons he had learned, stood firm in his support for Lila. At a gala dinner before Dubai's elite, he took the microphone and spoke passionately about his wife's project and the importance of equal chances. His words, filled with conviction and love, silenced the critics and won him the respect of many. As Lila's foundation began to take shape, new problems emerged. Balancing work, motherhood, and family life turned out to be more difficult than Lila had expected. There were nights of frustration and tears, times when she questioned if she'd made the right choice. In one of those times of doubt, Omar surprised her one evening after putting S to bed. He led her out to the yard beneath the light of the moon and stars, where he had prepared an intimate dinner. "I want you to know," he said as he poured her tea, "that I am proud of your strength, your vision, your heart. No matter how tough it gets, we're in this together." His words and the unconditional love behind them rekindled Lila's drive. Together, she and Omar began to find a new rhythm. They shared responsibilities, supported each other in their various projects, and most importantly, never lost sight of the love that had brought them together. As S's first birthday drew near, Lila's foundation began to show its first results. Women from all over Dubai and even from other emirates began to benefit from her activities. The Al-Rashid house, once a symbol of wealth and exclusivity, had become a beacon of hope and change. Time passed quickly in the Al-Rashid home, marked by S's unsteady first steps that soon became joyful runs down the marble halls. As their son grew, Omar and Lila found themselves reflecting on the heritage they wanted to leave, not just for S but for the entire community surrounding them. Lila's foundation grew, becoming a model for social change in the UAE. Women who had once been limited to early marriages or badly paid jobs were now running their own businesses, holding leadership positions, and most importantly, finding hope in a new path. Inspired by Lila's success, Omar began to re-examine his own business methods. He convened a meeting with the family company's board and proposed a number of radical changes. He wanted the oil company to diversify into renewable energy, adopt gender equality policies at all levels, and allocate a large portion of its profits to community development projects. Omar's plan was met with skepticism by some of the more conservative board members. "We're in the business of making money, not charity," argued one of the top executives. But Omar, with a conviction that surprised even those who knew him well, responded, "We're in the business of building a better future. Money is just a tool to get there." While Omar fought to transform the company from within, Lila faced her own set of challenges. The rising visibility of her foundation had turned her into a public figure, with invites to international conferences and interviews with global media. The pressure of being a voice for change while also handling her family life sometimes felt overwhelming. It was during one of these overseas conferences that Lila got a call that shook her to the core. Her father had suffered a heart attack and was in the hospital. Without a second thought, she took the first flight back to Dubai, her mind torn between worry for her father and guilt for being away. When she arrived at the hospital, Lila was met with a scene she never could have imagined. Omar sat there, holding his father-in-law's hand, speaking to him quietly in Arabic. Across from him sat Amira, alongside many of the women whose lives had been changed by the foundation. Slowly, Lila's father began to heal, and as he regained his strength, the family found itself drawing closer together. Omar spent long afternoons playing cards with his father-in-law, listening to stories from his youth and absorbing lessons that no business book could ever teach. Amira, meanwhile, discovered a newfound love for cooking, preparing the old man's favorite dishes and filling the house with aromas that conjured memories of simpler times. This experience led Omar and Lila to a profound thought on the true meaning of wealth and success. One evening, while they shared a quiet moment in the garden after Es had fallen asleep, Omar voiced a thought that had been budding in his mind. "I want to build a city," he said, his eyes shining with joy. "Not just any city, but a model of sustainability, equality, and opportunity for everyone." Lila listened closely as he painted his vision of a community where solar energy would power every home, where world-class schools and healthcare centers were accessible to all, where traditions blended seamlessly with innovation. "It will be a place where people from every background can live and thrive together," Omar continued, "where our son can grow up knowing the values of hard work, compassion, and unity." Lila held Omar's hands in hers, her eyes bright with pride and emotion. "It's a beautiful dream," she said, "and together we'll make it real." As little S slept happily in his crib, his parents began to plan not just for their own future but for an entire community. The Al-Rashid mansion, once a symbol of wealth and exclusivity, would become the heart of a new kind of legacy, one based in love, equality, and hope for a better future for all. The project, which Omar and Lila chose to call Al-Amal, or Hope in Arabic, began to take shape faster than anyone had anticipated. Omar's idea, combined with Lila's experience in community development, caught the attention of urban planners, architects, and sustainability experts from around the world. The land on the outskirts of Dubai, once barren and ignored, soon became a hive of activity. Massive solar panels began rising from the desert, offering clean energy for the city to come. Teams of engineers created water recycling systems that would transform Al-Amal into a green oasis in the middle of the desert. As construction progressed, Omar and Lila ensured that every choice reflected the values they wanted to instill in their community. Schools were meant to nurture creativity and critical thinking. Health centers combined modern medicine with traditional healing methods. Public spaces were crafted to encourage interaction and understanding among people from different countries and backgrounds. Yet the trip was not without its obstacles. Some attacked the project as too idealistic, dismissing it as unattainable. Others, more wary, viewed it as a ploy by Omar to polish his own and his company's image. But the couple stood firm in their vision, meeting every challenge with determination and working hard to turn their dream into reality. Their young son, S, now a curious and energetic 5-year-old, became a steady source of inspiration for his parents. His innocent questions about why things were the way they were often prompted Omar and Lila to rethink certain parts of the project, ensuring that Al-Amal would truly be a place where children could grow up safe and happy. As the city began to take shape, Omar and Lila guaranteed it wasn't just a top-down initiative. They organized community meetings, asking future residents to share their thoughts and concerns. This openness and clarity won the trust of many, attracting people from across the UAE and beyond who were eager to be part of this revolutionary vision. 3 years after building began, the first families started moving into Al-Amal. Although Al-Amal was still growing, the city already mirrored the vibrant, diverse community Omar and Lila had envisioned. Streets buzzed with life as children laughed and played in parks meant to ignite their imaginations, while adults met in cafes blending traditional and modern flavors. The buildings, a harmonious mix of modern Arabic architecture and sustainable design, rose against the desert skyline, their facades adorned with solar panels and lush vertical gardens. Omar and Lila, along with their now 8-year-old son S and newborn twin girls Amira and Dina, settled into a home at the heart of Al-Amal. Unlike the grand house they'd left behind, their new home was warm, welcoming, and similar to those of their neighbors. Choosing to live among the people in this community represented their deep commitment to equality and unity. Lila's foundation became a cornerstone of Al-Amal, giving training and support to local entrepreneurs. Many women who once benefited from the foundation's programs were now running their own businesses, from restaurants to tech startups. Omar, meanwhile, had transformed his family's business totally. What was once an oil empire now stood at the forefront of renewable energy technology, with Al-Amal itself acting as a living testament to these innovations. However, not everything went smoothly. The rapid growth brought with it unforeseen challenges, with cultural misunderstandings sometimes arising as people from varied backgrounds came together. Balancing growth with the preservation of the natural environment required constant adjustments. Yet these difficult times were when Al-Amal's true strength shined. The community came together to face each problem, finding creative solutions and building bridges of understanding. Omar and Lila led by example, always open to listening, learning, and adjusting. 10 years after Al Amal's creation, it had become a beacon of hope and progress, not only for the UAE but for the world. Delegations from governments and foreign organizations regularly visited the city, eager to learn from its model of inclusive, sustainable development. Now in their 50s, Omar and Lila looked with joy at what they'd built. Their love, which had once felt like a modern fairy tale, had turned into a powerful force for change and a better future. Their son S, now an inspired 18-year-old, prepared to head off to college. Growing up watching his parents work tirelessly toward their ideals, he was determined to pass on their legacy in his own way. The twins, Amira and Dina, now 10, embodied the unity and diversity that characterized Al Amal, their curious minds and compassionate hearts a mirror of the city itself. One warm summer evening, the Al-Rashid family met in the community garden Omar and Lila had planted in Al Amal's early days. Lila's father, now a respected elder, played with his granddaughters, and Amira talked animatedly with a group of neighbors, her earlier skepticism of common folk long forgotten. As the sun set over Al Amal, painting the sky in hues of gold and rose, Omar took Lila's hand and gazed into her eyes. "Did you ever think we'd come this far?" he asked with a smile. With tears of happiness, Lila replied, "I always knew our love could move mountains, but this is beyond anything I ever imagined." Watching their family and the community they'd built together, Omar and Lila understood that their love story had grown beyond the personal. It had become a tale of hope, change, and the chance of a better world. And so, in the heart of the desert, a city had grown from the love of two people who dared to dream. Al Amal stood as a live testament that with love, compassion, and determination, even the boldest dreams could become reality. And that's a wrap on today's story. Al Amal is more than just a city. It's a reminder that with love, hope, and determination, even the wildest dreams can take root and grow. Omar and Lila's journey shows us that true wealth isn't just about what we acquire, but about the legacy we leave behind, a legacy of unity, kindness, and opportunity for all. If this story inspired you, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible tales of change, resilience, and desire. And hey, we'd love to hear your thoughts. How would you build a better world? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you for watching, for helping, and for being part of our journey. Until next time, stay inspired and keep thinking big.